You're
I always try to like hold my dog up to the camera because I get really excited to show him off in the meetings.
yeah.
So I will be sharing some content during Michael's presentation as well. Just a couple of things that he wanted the audience members to see and be able to view. They are PDFs, so I'll do that during his session or his portion, and then during mine I'll share the slides that I sent.
Yeah, I see your slides here. If there's any issues, I have it up as well.
Perfect, thank you.
And are you on the call?
No. I am.
Okay, it seems like the link just gave me attendee, not producing.
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I know. I'm sure you're troubleshooting
no,
like crazy.
You're fine. I've got multiple
chaos
going at once.
You're a hero, Ann.
This is no small feat.
I have no slides. I'm just going to be a talking head. So technologically,
okay,
I'm the technological simple.
Okay, I am. Thank you. I can share content now.
You're welcome. Text me if you have a problem, okay?
Okay, yeah, I forgot your number.
I emailed it around earlier.
Yeah.
Actually, Zane, I am not able to share content either right now.
Okay, and is that something that
you should be able to click on her, find her under participants, and click the 3 dots. If you can't, let me know. Somebody else had issues with that today.
That just make a presenter.
That good?
There we go. I'm a presenter now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Todd, did you see our email earlier this week about the next webinar for the ASA?
I did. I did. That's very timely.
We are really excited about the speakers. There's a gentleman from Southeast Ohio who pulled his community together in a co-op to get fiber run, and they actually ran fiber in January, maybe February, but they actually have started running lines.
Wow. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
They made amazing progress. So I'm excited for what he'll be able to share. I'm sure it's not all positive, but I think people will be able to learn from the challenges as well.
Yeah, I tell you, there's some heavy hitting politicians, that are really talking about this now. Like I think did I email you the piece of Manchin?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to Todd. I'm working with Gabrielle Chapman and Highlander right now on like a food justice, food sovereignty, land justice kind of project. So I'm really excited to hear what y'all are going to be talking about.
Yeah, if there's any way we can collaborate, let me know. We do a lot of work in food and agriculture on our team.
Yeah, I might reach out later. We've been talking to a few academics and activists about like what food justice and food sovereignty can look back. I've done a lot of work researching Indigenous histories and what possible repairing those harms, building relationships could look like specifically around regenerative agriculture and solidarity shares.
Wow. So I actually, before I logged in this morning, I got an email from the Cooperative Development Foundation about a webinar series on cooperative approaches for food sovereignty in on tribal lands, and I was like trying to register for it before I logged in for this, and I was like, it's not working. I'm gonna have to come back to it.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
In May. Yeah, it's like mid-May, I think. So if you be on the lookout for that. I'm sorry, I'm getting a call that I'm gonna have to take. I'll be right back.
And we're still waiting for Michael, correct?
Correct, yes.
I apologize. That was actually my husband. His mom works for a healthcare system that has surplus vaccines today, and she was asking if we have a free afternoon.
Exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah, I'm
great.
getting mine in 4 days. I'm really excited.
It's the process is so different from county to county. It's amazing to see that the disparity.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, it's amazing to see for once, West Virginia kind of leading the way on at least the percentage of people, you know, total percentage of people vaccinated.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's some pretty severe inequities within the state there as well, but
Yeah, I've been really proud of some of the counties in Southeast Ohio are doing a really good job as well. So that's it's just an interesting time, really interesting time.
yeah, it sure is. Yeah,
And
I
my mom
found
got
that.
her first 2 shots. She's a West Virginia teacher, and so she's good, which is really
Yeah,
That's great.
nice.
yeah. You know, my brother-in-law is a teacher in West Virginia too, and he's fully vaccinated as well. You know, they put teachers there K through 12 at the front of the line. Um, I think that's good.
Are we so we're still waiting on Michael?
Yes,
Yeah.
it looks like it.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if some of those folks down there. Todd, maybe you can recall when we chatted with Michael, he wants me to share. There's 2 presentations from Mondragon and a one worker, one vote overview. Is that
I
what
think
you were thinking?
I believe that's what he said. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So are you guys, you're still good with the order of, I'll start, right? I'll go first and then Michael and then
Yeah, I
you'll,
think that makes sense.
yeah, okay.
Yep. So I'm going to turn my video off and then I'll just join back video when it's my turn. Is that right? So just to make
I
sure
think
we're
that's fine.
Okay. I will do that.
Okay, I'm gonna test. I've not used this before, so I need to practice a little bit. Okay, video off. Okay, now I've disappeared. Now I'm back, right.
Yeah, and I should have also made you a presenter. So if you said you don't have anything to share, but if you really want to, you should have that capability now.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Michael.
It looks like your microphone's muted, Michael.
Fix that. Okay, you should hear me now.
Yep.
Yes, all good.
Thank you guys. Good to see you. Oh, what a beautiful background you have.
I'm actually, I'm on the top of Spruce Knob, the highest point in West Virginia.
Oh my God. Oh, lucky you. Lucky you. Oh, I have sight envy now for sure. Wow. Wow.
And
That's
I did not take this picture. It's stolen from the internet. So
that's fine. That's fine. I mean, yeah, I mean, it makes everybody want to be there. Phew.
So what time do you folks have? I have two clocks that say two different things.
10:28.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like 10:28.
Mine are slow.
No, it's been such a crazy morning. We had a Zoom to try and work with African American populations in Brazil, and then we had a Zoom talking about the circular economy to the Chamber of Commerce in Gibraltar, and here we are with the ASA, one after another, boom, boom, boom. I mean, you can say what you want about the pandemic economy, but jumping around the world, the barriers have definitely been lowered because of technology, and now you can join anybody anywhere, and especially if you're in something where everybody's interested, and it's incredible trying to bring all these forces together. But
Yeah, so true.
it's lowered the barriers of entry, lowered the geographical distances, and made everything more flattened, really the curves of participating. So I think that's a good development.
Yeah, it really is. And the fact that all of these sessions are going to be recorded, I think it's great. I mean, in the past, any other conference I went to, you had to pick and choose, and you would always miss, there would always be three at the same time that you wanted to see.
Right.
So you had to miss a
Right.
few that, and so, yeah, this, there are benefits.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope that my face isn't coming in as too white. I mean, I'm right at the sun and I have the curtains closed, but the light still gets in, so it gives you that spectral Casper the Ghost look. That.
No, you're all good. You're all good, Mike.
All right, thanks. I just don't have your background there, but I wish I did. God.
I'm such a technological moron. I'm surprised I even figured out how to do that. It was just total luck.
I know it's.
Well, I think is it 10:30 according to?
Looks like it. Yep.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll go ahead and get us started here. Hello, everyone. My name is Todd Nesbitt. I am both the panel convener and a presenter for this panel, building a worker cooperative ecosystem in Central Appalachia. Why don't we begin with just we have three panelists, including myself. Why don't we begin with a few quick introductions, and then the order of operation today will be I will speak first, sort of laying the groundwork, and then Michael will take his turn, and then last but certainly not least, Hannah Scott. So a little bit about myself. I am a professor of geography at Lock Haven University of Pennsylvania. I guess more specifically, I'm an economic geographer. For the past 25 plus years, my work has been in Appalachian regional economic development issues. Over, you might say, the past 5 to 7 years, I've become more interested in cooperatives and specifically worker-owned cooperatives as a model for sustainable economic development within Appalachia. And that led me to doing a bit of research here and there and making connections, with wonderful people like Michael and Hannah. And here we are, right? We're at a point where we are trying to change the narrative in terms of how people view, think about, and operationalize economic development in places like Appalachia. And so I guess you might say at this point in my career, I am all things co-op, right? So I'll pass it on to Michael there, and he can give us a little info about his background.
Todd, thank you so much, and love the segue from all things co-op. So hi, everybody. My name is Michael Peck. I am the executive director and a co-founder of something called One Worker, One Vote. It's a nationwide movement focusing on worker co-ops, union co-ops, hybrid shared ownership models, and creating enterprises, projects, and ecosystems. We're in Cincinnati and Dayton, we're in Central Brooklyn, we're in Albuquerque, we're in LA, we're in lots of places. And we work with incredible local neighborhood stars to help create a whole new economy that works for all. And we're particularly focused on Appalachia, where we spend a lot of time and amazing people and made for the cooperative movement. So very nice to be here, and back over to you, Todd.
Hannah, could you share a few things with us about your background?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited about this conversation. I am the program manager of the Center for Cooperatives that's in the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences at Ohio State. And really, that's a long way of saying that my team and I support cooperatives across Ohio and the region in West Virginia, really the entire Midwest. We do work that helps entrepreneurs who are considering starting cooperatives. We also do education and training for employees and leaders of existing cooperatives. And we were connected with Todd about 3 years ago and worked with him to start what we call the Appalachia Cooperates Initiative to build awareness around the cooperative model in Appalachia. And that's what I'll be talking to you about today. My background is as a rural sociologist. I also have a law degree, so I'm very interested in the legal aspects of cooperatives. And I am from the foothills of Appalachia. So I grew up and still live in Southeast Ohio, Southern Ohio, and my family and I are involved in agriculture. So excited to be here today and look forward to the conversation.
Okay, super. Thank you, Hannah. Okay, well, without further ado, I'll just go ahead and get into it here. The plan is for each of us to speak for somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes, give or take. I'm going to try to be quite brief, and it's important to us to leave time for feedback and comments because we see this as a collaborative effort. I first want to give a big thanks to all of the ASA folks for putting on this virtual conference. I can't imagine the work involved and all of the technical skill that's needed. So thank you very much for that. I also want to thank my fellow panelists, Michael Peck and Hannah Scott, for agreeing to serve on the panel with me and share their tremendous expertise with us on cooperatives and economic democracy. I've learned bunches from them over the last few years, and I really look forward to continuing our work together in the future. So my role here is to, as I said, outline the broader economic context of economic underdevelopment within Central Appalachia. I'll begin by saying that I think the current form of capitalism has failed the majority of Central Appalachians. And allow me to use my home state of West Virginia to demonstrate this point. As a West Virginian, maybe I should say West by God, Virginia, right? As many of us like to say. More than half of West Virginia's children are low income or poor. West Virginia ranks 49th in median household income, with 18% of its population living in poverty. The state reports the lowest bachelor's degree attainment in the country at 19.6%. The average life expectancy for a man in McDowell County, West Virginia, is 67 years. Believe it or not, this is equivalent to the African countries of Burundi and Sudan. In West Virginia, nearly 15% of the population struggles with food insecurity and hunger. West Virginia ranks 50th in the number of job opportunities that provide a living wage. It's very clear to myself and most Appalachian scholars that the current economic model within West Virginia is broken. As author Chris Hedges suggests in his book, Days of Destruction, Days of Revolt, West Virginia has become a sacrifice zone of human and environmental devastation. Appalachian scholars have for decades addressed the exploitation and underdevelopment of Appalachia, with West Virginia often being the epicenter of discussion. The region's poverty has been attributed to problems associated with environmental determinism, a degenerate culture, and predatory colonial capitalism. While these models have made for interesting academic discourse and debate, they have done little to nothing to alleviate the plight of the most impoverished. Today, there is general agreement among Appalachian scholars that the top-down, modernist-based economic development models applied to the region have largely failed. Most of us are asking questions like the following. Why should we continue to embrace a top-down regional economic development model that has maintained West Virginia as the poorest state in the United States for over a century? Are there alternative models available to help Appalachia transition from decades of economic underdevelopment to a future of sustainable prosperity? More recently, Appalachian scholars have broadened the development discussion to include issues of human well-being and environmental, community, and economic sustainability. The Journal of Appalachian Studies has published multiple volumes of scholarly work promoting sustainable economic development in Appalachia in the hopes of redefining and democratizing development. Through this work, we are beginning to ask the following critical questions. How do we change the narrative surrounding economic development policy within Appalachia? How do we build a regional economy grounded in broad-based capitalism? That is a form of capitalism that is inclusive and builds regional wealth within Appalachia for the majority of its people. The way we do this, I believe, is through the democratization of the Appalachian economy. We need to build an economy that is by the people, and for the people of Central Appalachia. Americans, and especially Appalachians, champion freedom and democracy. So why should we be deprived of economic democracy? Why can't we have an economic model in Central Appalachia that is inclusive, democratic, and builds broad-based community wealth? Appalachians, and especially West Virginians, are starved for a new form of economic development, one that builds and maintains attachment to place and community through the creation of living wage jobs that champion human dignity in the workplace. I believe that cooperatives, and specifically worker-owned cooperatives, give us the best chance of building economic democracy and long-term sustainability in Appalachia. Let's consider the following cooperative principles that serve as the foundation for worker cooperatives and economic democracy. It's my argument that we should use these principles as the foundation for a new and reformed regional economic development strategy within Central Appalachia. Imagine for a moment, and yes, put on your imagination cap here, a corporation or workplace based on the following 10 principles. For that matter, I want you to think a little bigger and imagine the entire Central Appalachian regional economy based on the following 10 principles. Number 1, open admission. The cooperative is non-discriminatory. All are invited to join the co-ops. Number 2, democratic organization. One person, one vote. This ensures participatory democracy between workers and management. Number 3, the sovereignty of labor. Capital is subordinate to labor. People who contribute their labor will share in the governance and in the distribution of the wealth of the organization's members that the organization's members create together. Number 4, capital as instrument. Capital is a tool used by members to achieve the goals they set for themselves. Number 5, participation in management. This fosters the progressive development of self-management, the flattening of hierarchy, the creation of multiple flexible structures for organization, worker involvement in decision-making, and the training of staff at different levels in order to help make participation widespread and effective. Number 6, wage solidarity. This determines the wage differential between the lowest and the highest paid, roughly 1 to 9 at the level of the individual cooperative. Number 7, intercooperation. This encourages cooperation between co-ops, forming common sectoral strategies and transferring worker members between co-ops when necessary. We refer to this as a worker cooperative ecosystem. Number 8, social transformation. Co-ops should be committed to the transformation of values within the broader community. Number 9, universal solidarity. Co-ops are to practice solidarity with labor on a global scale. Number 10, education. Last but certainly not least, the foundation of a worker cooperative ecosystem is education. Education should be a core value of the co-op. Knowledge is seen as key to innovation and the democratization of power within the co-op and broader regional community. Believe it or not, this type of regional economy exists. It exists in places like Mondragon, Spain, and Preston, England, and it's currently being built in the US in places like Cleveland, Dayton, and Cincinnati. These democratic forms of regional economic development are happening quite successfully around the world and within the United States through interconnected worker-owned cooperatives, that is, through regional cooperative worker cooperative ecosystems. Our task now is to build a worker cooperative ecosystem within Appalachia. And this is not something that will happen overnight. We're talking here about broad structural economic change that will most likely take at least a generation to implement. So how do we do it? Or perhaps more precisely, I should say, how are we doing it? Because we have started the process. And so now for more details on this, I'll pass the discussion on to Michael, and he can get down to the nitty-gritty, right, of how this is actually working at the local level and how we are aiming to apply the Mondragon model to Appalachia.
Well, Todd, thank you so much. And if I was a few years younger, I might enroll in your class and learn something. You couldn't have stated it better, so I'm not even going to try. I'm going to go back down to the trenches where I work and talk about the practical factors. But first, I also would like to thank the Appalachian Studies Association for hosting this event and inviting me to participate. I'd like to call out the organizing production skills of Ann Bryant at Marshall University in Huntington, who put our panel together, and many other things in the middle of a multiple pandemic economy, which hit Appalachia hard with all the inequalities and the contagion pushing frontline populations even more to the brink. And we also are at the point of a major stimulus passage, seeding hope and proof and renewal for the long road back. It's just not building back better, it's building back better and fairer. Let me underline the word fairer. To my panel colleagues, Todd and Hannah, this is not the first time we're together, and I know it won't be the last, but I always want to thank you for your work making such a difference throughout Appalachia. And it's a joy to be united with you again. And I'd like to also thank the many people involved in framing the Reimagine Appalachia vision, people like Mark Shanahan, Todd Hanna, others who have contributed to what Hannah described already as the Appalachia Cooperates Blueprint and the regional roadmap to take us forward. I also need to thank the leader partners in our One Worker, One Vote movement. We have 10 co-founders and 10 advisory board members, and we work very closely with people in Mondragon like Iban Zugasti and Oscar Mugaretha, who provide daily inspiration. And throughout Central Appalachia, there's so many people in Morgantown, West Virginia, with Amanda Marple and her team, Co-op Cincy with Kristen Barker and Helen Barron and their team, Co-op Dayton with Leila Klein and her team, the Ohio Employee Ownership Center at Kent State University with Chris Cooper and his team, in Kentucky, Tennessee, so many of Appalachia's 420 counties across 13 states and 205,000 square miles from our work in Southern New York, our Central Brooklyn Union Co-op healthcare organizing ecosystem, to Northern Mississippi, our Cooperation Jackson colleagues. We cover the full scope here. And we could dedicate this entire panel just recognizing the blessed work of like-minded people, human way showers, similar to the Mondragon's cooperative system, ecosystem itself in Basque region. Everything starts with education, with showing, not telling, with how self-reliance and local self-determination achieve local economic sovereignty through rising purpose and value-driven businesses connected within local ecosystems that unite to produce profitable worker ownership and workplace democracy, better civic and more civil societies. These are not alternative economic development models, as Todd already pointed out. They are becoming mainstream enlightened capitalism models that are organically seeded from the bottom up, bringing the power of values and e pluribus unum back into practice, showing how the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Instead of all the injustices of trickle down that all of us have suffered from, these ecosystems focus on what we describe in the One Worker, One Vote movement as bubble up to gusher up. Worker cooperatives, union cooperatives, shared services cooperatives, democratic ESOPeratives, and other localized examples of hybrid shared ownership models. Many of them, like the union co-op model, inspired by almost 70 years of Mondragon cooperative experiences. And all of these examples demonstrating how mutualism, solidarity, and structure achieve resiliency and prosperity uplift. Appalachians know more about resiliency than most by default, but today, fortunately, resiliency is becoming a thing. For capital providers, the S in social for the ESGs, the environmental social governance metrics that everybody is talking about, is taking center stage, and they're based on resiliency algorithms. Resiliency and stakeholder ownership are inseparable. One provides the roots and rationale for the other. And increasingly, both social impact and traditional funders, the hedge guys, the pension people, the private equity forces, they're seeking to finance worker takeovers of companies for profitable social reasons, and because stakeholder-owned firms achieve superior resiliency and performance. As Mondragon proves, being profitable allows us to afford, choose, defend, and sustain our own values. Our localized vision in One Worker, One Vote is to flatten the curves with virtuous cycles, to build purpose-driven businesses and ecosystems devoted to the common good by offering examples of solutions. We're in the tire business, building the tires for everyone who needs to kick them. These ecosystems support vibrant, mutualist, civic democracy, which can only be based on transparent markets. And they achieve much higher social mobility, an end to false choices, and the choices that steal our freedoms, disfigure our neighborhoods, and limit our livelihood. Because this is a distinguished academic practitioner office, two books that describe and guide our work that are out there now. One is Reimagining Capitalism in a World on Fire by our friend Rebecca Henderson from Harvard Business School. She also wrote a case study entitled One Worker, One Vote, Mondragon in the USA. And by our friend and One Worker, One Vote advisory board member, Sarah Horowitz, who was the founder of the Freelancers Union. She's just come up with mutualism, building the next economy from the ground up. So let's show these local examples. The title of my talk today was Localizing Mondragon, localizing the lessons from Mondragon, but also from down the country road. And because the country road is producing more and more examples that are very meaningful for us. So, let's first talk about Mondragon. Situated in the Basque region of Spain, which looks a lot like the photo or the living picture behind Todd when he spoke. I mean, you could be in the Basque region of Spain and see the photo of Todd and not know which place is which. Mondragon Corporation is the world's largest network of worker-owned cooperatives with 98 industrial cooperatives, 143 subsidiaries of cooperatives, 7 foundations, and nearly 81,000 jobs. They have their own university, their own bank, and their own insurance mutual. They began in 1956 with a single worker-owned industrial cooperative, and they've since become the 10th largest business group in Spain. And today, the Mondragon ecosystem spans multiple sectors, including industry, finance, retail, and knowledge. What is the relevance to Central Appalachia? Well, first, Mondragon emerged in response to a specific set of cultural and historical conditions. Faced with low levels of worker training, high levels of unemployment, and persecution from the Spanish government from after the Spanish Civil War through World War II, Mondragon sought to improve local access to financial support and security. Critically, they invested in vocational training for their workers and saw technology as a potential driver of economic growth. As the organization initiatives grew, Mondragon positioned economic activity as a means to boost employment and build regional capacity for production, research, and development. As a for-profit entity competing in international markets, Mondragon is guided by principles of democratic participation, job creation, human and professional development, and ecosystem solidarity. Their use of technology and their focus on innovation, constant innovation, continue to be major factors in their success. So here are what I call 4 pillars of the interconnecting, synergies enabling Mondragon innovation and entrepreneurship sub-ecosystem that can and are being localized in many, many places throughout Appalachia, but where more integration, expansion, and collaboration could replicate and amplify with more transformative results. First is Saulan. Saulan is a Mondragon technology and consultancy and incubator founded in the 1980s by professors from Mondragon University and one of the first entrepreneurship incubator accelerators in Spain. The Bilbao Innovation Factory, formed around 2013, it's an incredible building in Bilbao that includes several degree-bearing team-based educational programs, an incubator and accelerator, support for early-stage businesses, low-cost co-working space for high-growth small and medium-sized businesses. And that is being replicated right now through the Bronx Cooperative Development Initiative and with the help of my Mondragon colleague, Ivan Zugasti. Gatz Impressa is a startup business coaching and mentoring program that pairs entrepreneurs who for various reasons fell off the map with a network of trained mentors and prepares them to access credit from Mondragon's cooperative bank. The statistics in Gatz Impressa are really unbelievable. Almost 98% of businesses started, continue, and sustain. And the program has been profitable from the start. When we briefed this to academics throughout the United States, they asked to see the numbers because they can't believe the results. We've spent tens of millions of dollars in this country trying to do something without even coming close. The secret is that there's no handoff. In Mondragon, the same mentor stays with the company from beginning to forever. So you have, for example, I saw a video where there was one singer who was being mentored and being funded by Gatz Impressa to start his own music business. And when he went on YouTube and local television, there was the Mondragon banker right behind him, shaking, the cymbals and participating. I mean, that's taking mentoring to a higher level than I might be capable of, but you get the spirit. The spirit is, we're with you from cradle to cradle. So, for example, in the Preston model, Preston was a city a little bit bigger than Cincinnati, but at the bottom of every economic indice in the UK, located near Manchester and Liverpool in industrial northwest England. They created their own cooperative bank from the Mondragon model. Co-op Cincy, which I'll talk about more later, they've created a union cooperative conversion fund. There are activist CDFIs, community development finance institutions and credit unions throughout Appalachia. The National Cooperative Bank's back office is located in Hillsboro, Ohio. These dots are waiting to be connected into an integrated and collaborative strategy and action roadmap. We should do that. Another example from Mondragon is El Carlan. These are all in my my notes, which have been left with the team and accessible to everybody. This is a new cooperative technical assistance provider created by the Basque government to help companies form and convert to cooperative ownership. It could be compared, for example, to the Ohio Employee Ownership Center at Kent State University. So here are some examples of existing co-op ecosystems right in our Appalachian backyard. Co-op Cincy, which started around the 2011-2012 timeframe, now has 8 co-ops they have launched. One is Our Harvest, which is an urban farm, Sustainergy, which is an energy efficiency co-op, profitable from the first day of operation, Cincy Cleaning Co-op, Care Share, Queen City Commons, A Touch of TLC, Home Healthcare Services, Bhutanese Bari, which is with refugees in collaboration with Catholic Charities, Ohio, and Renting Partnerships, which is actually a nonprofit that focuses on affordable housing in a way that offers financial equity and deep community. And they're currently launching a real estate investment co-op called Dividend Housing. Co-op Cincy's transition work, they launched the Business Legacy Fund in the fall of 2020, which is now a $3 million fund through the Seed Commons Cooperative. 12 companies applied, 6 were selected as finalists, and are currently going through the transition process to worker ownership. New Paradigm Ventures is an acquisition approach in Co-op Cincy to broaden ownership by bringing in a professional manager with deep ties in the African American community to lead a company Co-op Cincy purchases and then transitions with Co-op Cincy to a cooperative. Startup work. Co-op Cincy is holding 5 14-week Co-op U's. This time it's National Child Care Co-op U, Swahili Co-op U, 2 Power in Numbers, Black-led Co-op Boot Camp, and General Co-op U. The Seed Commons Financial Cooperative member, Co-op Cincy is a member of the Seed Commons Financial Cooperative, and through that they have a peer local fund, as I said, that has offered 5 of their co-op loans. This is how Co-op Cincy developed the $3 million revolving transition fund. Seed Commons is also playing a great role in the Downtown Crenshaw Rising initiative, which is helping Black LA purchase a 40-acre mall that was currently sort of set aside for predatory real estate companies that wanted to gentrify an area that has been historically African American. The name of this project, by the way, is called 40 Acres in a Mall, which I'm sure we'll all appreciate. Co-op Cincy's 5th Biennial Union Co-op Symposium will be this year on November 12th and 13th. We encourage every one of you to attend. Please hold the date and participate. In Co-op Dayton, we have 937 Delivers. It's a driver and restaurant-owned delivery co-op, which is delivering for 18 restaurants with over 20 drivers, most of them or underemployed restaurant workers. They've been delivering for 3 months. They've saved over $100,000 in local restaurant revenue compared to extractive models like DoorDash, etc. And 937 Deliver drivers will elect worker-owner board members in the next couple of months. Gem City Market on the corner of Salem and Superior Avenue in Dayton is about to start operations as a vibrant community-centered grocery store. It's localizing the Mondragon Eroski model and the Co-op Cincy Apple Street Market Initiative. And it's restoring grocery service to Northwest Dayton for the first time in over a decade. Gem City's Market's mission is to serve, engage, and empower its neighborhoods by providing affordable, high-quality food in a clean and welcoming environment that is worker and community-owned. It's in final preparations for opening day. They're in the process of hiring 26 people and have been giving tours to community members and elected officials. and is beginning, Co-op Dayton is preparing to begin worker owner training with support from Co-op Cincy, because that's how it works in the cooperative framework, co-ops helping co-ops. So I just want to leave you with some movement conclusions now that we've had a brief overview of the world that affects us and the world that we can affect, what Mondragon has done with very similar topography and circumstances, and what's happening in local ecosystems like Co-op Dayton and Co-op Cincy. Jose Maria Ariz Mendireta is the priest servant leader who was so instrumental to creating Mondragon. It took him 15 years of teaching and leadership by example before the first Mondragon cooperative started. He would create soccer games because through sports he could engender solidarity in local valley communities. You know, Co-op Cincy organized in 2011. In 2012, the steelworkers of Mondragon came together for the union co-op model. We talked about Mondragon in the South in Cooperation Jackson in 2014. We've now talking about Mondragon in Los Angeles through the Downtown Crenshaw Rising initiative that I've talked about. So while it's true that nothing about us without us is for us, the opposite is also true, that everything about us with us can be cooperatively for all of us. This is called the solidarity dividend, and it's profitable, short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Jose Maria Ariz Mendireta, the priest, said that those who opt to make history and change the course of events themselves have an advantage over those who decide to wait passively for the results of the change. And in One Worker, One Vote, we say that Elvis has already left the building to co-start another Appalachian cooperative ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that fantastic overview of the worker cooperative ecosystem and how it's being applied in other parts of the world and even in our backyard in Cincinnati and Dayton. And so what I would like to talk to you all about today is the work that Todd referenced that we're doing in Appalachia, largely in Central Appalachia, through the Appalachia Cooperates Initiative, and just talk to you about the model that we're using to frame that work and how we're going about it, partly so that everyone here is aware of it and can spread the word about it, that those who are interested can get involved with it. This is a collaborative, cooperative process, and we welcome more engagement. And so I will share some slides just because I have some good pictures that I want you all to be able to see. So let me know if you can see my screen okay. Todd, does that look good? Or anyone?
Looks great.
Great.
Yes,
So,
yes, I can see it perfect.
Great, thank you. So first of all, thank you, Todd and Michael, for setting up this discussion so well today. I think you've given us great examples of worker cooperatives and understanding the principles of cooperatives and how cooperatives are a unique model that can build wealth in the communities where they're situated. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the initiative, but also the cooperative economy in Appalachia, focusing on Central Appalachia. That's where most of the work that we do with our center is situated. And I'm happy to answer questions if I can as we go further. So the Appalachia Cooperates Initiative really is a learning network. And Michael mentioned the importance of learning to the Mondragon model. And that's really the foundation of what the ACI, as I'm going to abbreviate it throughout our conversation today. Really, it's a learning network. It's a peer network of community developers, business developers, cooperative advocates, economic developers, both traditional economic developers and social justice advocates throughout the region. And really the goal is to contribute to the development of a thriving co-op ecosystem like the ones that we've been talking about so far this morning. And I'll share with you kind of the three goals that we have for the ACI in how we want to build that ecosystem and the framework that we're utilizing for that ecosystem. But first, I need to recognize that this work is not done in isolation, and in fact, this work was catalyzed by a conversation among multiple institutions and multiple partners. So it was a dialogue between Todd, as he mentioned, with Lock Haven University in Pennsylvania, some colleagues that we have at West Virginia University Extension Service in their community development organization. Some folks from Catholic Charities were engaged, and then subsequently we had engagement from people from the Kentucky Center for Agriculture and Rural Development, from Unlimited Future in Huntington, West Virginia, from the Appalachian Center for Economic Networks, AceNet in Athens, Ohio, from Cooperation Central Appalachia, and really from a list that I could just continue to go on, but lots and lots of partnership organizations catalyzing this work. So I want to make sure that we recognize that this is not a something that this group here that you see today is doing on our own. So I wanted to take a step back and frame cooperatives in the United States more broadly, because oftentimes cooperatives are kind of the hidden sector of our economy. Many folks interact with cooperatives but don't really know that they're interacting with cooperatives. This map shows you research from the University of Wisconsin Center for Cooperatives that mapped cooperatives in the US by sector and counted approximately 64,000 cooperatives. And these are cooperatives of all types. So this includes worker cooperatives, agricultural marketing cooperatives, rural electric cooperatives, consumer cooperatives, and everything in between. And at that time, there were approximately 850,000 people employed by these cooperatives. And you can see that there is a geographic distribution. There are areas of our country where cooperatives are more prevalent and less prevalent. And we can chat about that further if you'd like to, but you can see how that is spread here. But if we take a look at cooperatives, particularly in Central Appalachia, there are cooperatives in our communities operating in all sectors. You know, if you can imagine it, it's probably being done as a cooperative somewhere. But I wanted to highlight a couple of different kinds of cooperatives that are doing work in agriculture, in worker ownership, in industry, and even more. So agricultural cooperatives historically have been used in the agricultural economy for hundreds of years. The first agricultural co-ops in the US started just after the founding of the country. But of course, cooperation has been used in agricultural communities forever. And today we're seeing a lot of approaches to supporting sustainable food systems through agricultural cooperatives. A lot of the work that my team does in Ohio and West Virginia is to support agricultural entrepreneurs who are interested in direct marketing their products to their community members, perhaps to their schools, but they need to build the infrastructure around them that allows them to do that so that those entrepreneurs can retain more of the food dollar. The cooperative allows them to be more efficient and effective at their marketing of their products, or perhaps their purchasing of their feed or other things that they need to operate their farm. And the idea is that they can increase the profit of their individual farms by working together. So this picture here is meant to represent, for example, one cooperative doing that in Southeast Ohio, Southern Ohio, the Buckeye Valley Beef Co-op, which markets members' meat to local and regional retailers as well as to consumers. And it allows these young farmers who are largely new and beginning farmers to expand their profits, expand their markets, and reduce the individual risk that they face in working in these marketplaces. This type of work is really important, we think, because if we take a look at statistics about the region's agriculture, we know that many of the farms in Central Appalachia are small farms. They are family farms that have opportunities for increasing their profits are really important, as well as for supporting new and beginning farmers, because in West Virginia, for example, only 8% of agricultural producers are younger than 34 years old. In Ohio, that number is about 10%. And there are there are a lot of reasons to be concerned about the future of our sustainable food systems because of those figures. So agricultural cooperatives are doing a lot of work in Central Appalachia to help support those food systems. Worker-owned cooperatives are blossoming in Central Appalachia, we'll say. They are not the most prevalent form of cooperatives in our region, but there are more and more all the time. You can see here on the screen, this is Unity Cafe in Parkersburg, West Virginia, that became a cooperative in I might get this date wrong, so don't quote me. It's 2016 or 2017. I would have to go back and look. But as Todd and Michael were mentioning, worker-owned cooperatives foster workplace democracy. They create diverse opportunities for employment and ownership and wealth building among their workers. In the US, the Democracy at Work Institute estimates that there are about 465 worker-owned cooperatives or democratic workplaces in the United States. Some interesting economic data that I think will show you the reason that Todd and Michael and I are so passionate about this work is, on average, those worker-owned cooperatives that the Democracy at Work Institute studied pay a wage of $19.67 per hour in 2019, which is significantly above both the minimum wage and median wages often. They bring in an estimated $505 million in revenue collectively. But they also offer more than just economic benefits. So they are offering, of course, gainful employment. They are empowering their workers to engage. But there's also evidence that communities that have high rates of employee ownership benefit the community largely. So there's evidence that they have better health outcomes. There's evidence that these communities have better educational outcomes, and that they have greater civic engagement or social participation in their communities. So, there are a lot of reasons, I think, to be excited about worker-owned cooperatives. Unity is just one worker-owned cooperative in our region. There are others, of course. If there's anybody from Athens, I would be remiss if I did not point out Casa Nueva, a beloved Athens restaurant that was founded in 1985 and now has about 21 worker owners. There are also worker cooperatives and cooperatives working in industry throughout Central Appalachia. So some of you might be familiar with Opportunity Threads in Morganton, North Carolina, in the western part of North Carolina. These cooperatives are creating local manufacturing and industrial jobs, and they're increasing local economic power. And particularly in Western North Carolina, they're doing this in the textile industry, which is, as many of you know, probably an industry that experienced significant decline, but was historically a very strong industry in that part of Appalachia. So I can't go through all of the examples of cooperatives that are working in our region, but I wanted to highlight that there is really a diverse community of cooperatives working in Central Appalachia, and they are supporting diverse communities of worker owners and member owners. They're creating community-based employment. They are responding to community needs and supporting workplace democracy in a way that harnesses their members' economic power. And one more kind of, I guess, argument in favor of the cooperative business model is that we know from economic data that cooperatives are more stable forms of businesses than other types of businesses. So the World Council of Credit Unions did a study that found that only 10% of cooperatives fail after their first year in business. Now, if you look at non-cooperative business structures and failure rates there, which are anecdotally we know pretty high, this study found that about 60 to 80% of other business models in the US were not operating after their first year. If we take a look at 5 years out, that data indicates that about 90% of cooperatives are still operating, while only 3 to 5% of other types of businesses are still operating after 5 years. So there's a lot of evidence supporting the benefits of the cooperative economy. So as Todd mentioned, we're thinking about how to build a cooperative ecosystem like the ones that Michael highlighted in Central Appalachia. And this framework that we're using is actually from two very well-known worker cooperative advocates, Hillary Abel and Melissa Hoover. And it's in a report that you all can take a look at called the Cooperative Growth Ecosystem, Inclusive Economic Development in Action. And what these folks did was actually take a look at the communities where there is an ecosystem of worker cooperatives bubbling up, some of them in very different stages, but they took a look at ecosystems like San Francisco, New York City, Madison, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Ohio, which Michael shared has a lot of activity, and Western North Carolina, which I mentioned is the home place of Opportunity Threads. And they were taking a look at questions like, what are the key elements of an entrepreneurial ecosystem that support sustainable growth of co-op enterprises and their ability to create quality jobs and assets for low-wage workers specifically? And so you can see on the screen, those green components are really what these folks call essential elements of an ecosystem. So any ecosystem that is supporting cooperatives and a cooperative framework is going to need the skills and capacity, both of worker owners and in technical assistance, which needs to be plentiful, really, because this is not an easy process necessarily. It's like starting any other business, but as a group project is what we often tell groups that we're working with. Financing, as you know, with any business is extremely important. And then people doing the actual work of cooperative development. Then you can see in the middle, these are additional elements. They're, I think, framed as important elements in the cooperative ecosystem. These are things that will build up that ecosystem to the next level. You can see that those are business supports, policy, advocacy partnerships, and et cetera. And then additional elements over on the right, values-driven businesses, attitudes and culture, and cooperative education. So this is really the framework that as we're thinking about the Appalachia Cooperates Initiative, we're thinking about how to utilize this framework to bring an ecosystem to bear. And as Todd mentioned, it's not a fast process by any means, and it will take many years, decades, and likely generations. So what have we done? So the ACI is really focused on, I think it was Todd and myself and some other organizers put together kind of these 3 bullet points to describe the initiative. So we're trying to develop practitioners' awareness and understanding. The goal here is to better recognize and act on opportunities. We're trying to foster relationships because relationships are an extremely important part of facilitating this work. And we're trying just generally to raise awareness of the cooperative business model as an opportunity for economic development, because as I said earlier, it's kind of a hidden sector of our economy. Nonetheless, it's an important sector. So those are kind of the formal goals of what we're doing. And how we put that in action is really through pre-COVID, we were doing community workshops. So we hosted a workshop in Charleston, West Virginia, in Athens, Ohio. Those were learning from existing co-ops or co-op developers, thinking about the nuts and bolts of how a cooperative actually functions. We hosted a series of documentary film screenings of the film Shift Change, which highlights worker cooperatives in the US, Europe, and Latin America to learn about the worker cooperative model. We hosted those on college campuses. So we were at Ohio University, West Virginia University, and then we did a virtual activity with students from Ohio State University, and had opportunities for dialogue after that, really to just think with participants about what worker cooperatives could do in their community. And then we've hosted since COVID, we had to shift everything, of course, like this conference, to a virtual format. So we've been hosting educational webinars throughout 2020. Some of those were to learn about Mondragon as a model for Central Appalachia. One of them was with the Ohio Employee Ownership Center to think about worker ownership as a succession planning strategy. And we recently hosted one in January on exploring Appalachia's cooperative economy. So we've been really pleased with the engagement that we've had from community developers, extension professionals, academics, economic development professionals, thinking about how this work could be applied, how the cooperative model could be applied in their communities. And I must make a plug before I finish up that we are having our next educational webinar on March 23rd at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about challenges with broadband in Appalachia and how some of our neighbors are using the cooperative approach to address those challenges to bring broadband to their communities. So we'll have a rural electric cooperative who is located in Western Virginia, who's been offering broadband to customers since I think about 2016. And then we'll have one of the co-founders of a startup broadband cooperative in Southeast Ohio. And they'll be sharing their experiences. Really, these are just opportunities to learn from other people and to understand how our communities might be able to apply what we can learn from others. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen, but I did want to share my contact information and my team's contact information. If you want to learn more about cooperatives, if you want to learn more about our work, please feel free to cooperate with us and get in touch with us in any of these communication formats. So I will stop screen sharing so we can have time for Q&A, and I look forward to questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, both Michael and Hannah, for contextualizing all of this for us and giving us some great real world examples, right, of how this is actually happening in not just in faraway places like Preston, England, and Mondragon, Spain, but within Appalachia and you know, right along the Appalachian borders, you know, in places like Cincinnati, Dayton, and Cleveland. So, okay, why don't we, I'd like to open it up for question and comment now. I guess we could do that through the chat option, or we could do it the old-fashioned way. Also, folks, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and show us your face and join in the conversation.
Hi, everyone. I have a question. I just want to thank you for the presentation. And then my question was, as cooperatives become a more popular model, is there a way to ensure that they remain kind of faithful to their original values so that they're not co-opted into something that they weren't originally intended, or as people that might have kind of created like the original power structure to kind of like take over and misuse?
Yeah, you know, this is an excellent question. And I know Michael can speak to this because this has been an issue within Mondragon as it has evolved and changed over the years. So I'll throw this to Michael.
Sure. Well, Zoe, thank you so much for that question. Yes, I mean, you know, credit unions in some cases around the country have faced what we call the demutualization threat, right? For whatever reason, people are told or believe that they're going to unlock all this capital by taking the cooperative away from its members and putting it into the market, monetizing it. And I was part of a technology company that wasn't a cooperative, but it had a really good ESOP, and it was worker owned, almost 98%. And in that particular case, outside board members came in and overran the founder and took it to the market. And while some people made a lot of money, the company lost its luster and was never the same as it was before, where you had all these iconoclastic people only under the same roof because they all believed it was their enterprise. So there's ways, and Mondragon has had its challenges. There have been a few examples of cooperatives leaving. Some of them came back after leaving. There was one wind turbine blade manufacturer who didn't feel they were getting the investment out of Mondragon they needed, and so they became part of a much bigger European conglomerate. but it's been very, very rare. And the ratio between everyone queuing up to join and those deciding to leave is really lopsided. So, you know, cooperatives have articles of incorporation. They have values and principles, corporate charter, just like any other company. And that's where you get a chance to really put down what your core beliefs are. The people that found the cooperative, they have a lot to say about those core beliefs. Cooperatives, especially worker cooperatives, are consensus driven. So, you know, you need to agree and you get to vote. And there's nobody that can take your voice and your vote away. And so otherwise you are no longer a cooperative, at least a worker cooperative. And so there's a whole process here towards making sure that the cooperative is structured in accordance with the vision of its co-founders. And then the last point I want to make is that when you bring in new people to a cooperative, it's important to go through a good screening process that is documented. You know, as cooperatives have learned that, you know, just like you may decide to date somebody before you maybe get married, the same way with cooperatives. You should try it out. A lot of people have this idea in their heads, but maybe they prefer a more vertical environment, or maybe they want to punch the clock and they don't want the trials and tribulations of being an owner. People have to discover this for themselves. It's cultural. It's always cultural. And so in Mondragon, you know, we have an apprentice period where people come in, and after a while, then you know, they redeclare they're ready for membership, and people vote to accept them, like in many other kinds of structures. And I think this works very well because you have to have your eyes wide open, and your fellow pre-existing cooperative members have to have their eyes wide open too. And when you do it very carefully, you can have incredible diversity, but everybody you need united by common values.
Michael, I think those are fantastic points. I'd like to add a little bit of additional context from, you know, if we look even outside of the worker co-op space, there are mechanisms and principles built into the cooperative model to try to ensure that they maintain what some of my colleagues call their cooperative character, you know, to make sure that they stay cooperative in spirit and in the way that they approach how they're serving their members. I will say that it's a constant effort on the part of a cooperative. I mean, it's something that always has to be happening over the entire life of the cooperative. There's never a time that you're just, oh, we're done building our cooperative culture. It just keeps going. It has to keep going. And so, first of all, there are mechanisms built into cooperatives to ensure that they are controlled democratically by their members, so that everyone has a voice. And as Michael was mentioning, you have to utilize that voice. And a big part of the way that cooperatives are governed is through their board of directors often. And it is a responsibility of that board of directors. When we do training for boards, we talk about the responsibility of the directors to maintain the cooperative character. That's a part of their job. So that's really important. Another principle of cooperatives is member participation. So there are, you know, that idea that they bring members into the control and to the input of the organization is built into their DNA as a cooperative, but they have to figure out what that looks like in their co-op and implement those. It looks different in every co-op, I think, or often can look different. And then I also wanted to point out that one of the other principles that co-ops follow is member education and training. And sometimes that member education and training is in whatever the cooperative is doing, whether it's manufacturing windmill parts. You know, the education and training can be about that manufacturing process, or oftentimes the education and training is about the cooperative model and the governance of the co-op. And that's another way that we see that culture building over time. So one of the things that our organization does is provide training on the co-op model for new employees of co-ops, because the idea there is that those employees are becoming ambassadors of the co-op, and they're a part of building that culture over time. And it's important that they see that and recognize that early in their careers. So lots of ways to do it, but excellent question. not every co-op does it well. I think that's just the truth of it. It just doesn't happen well in some places, and we can learn from that too, I guess.
Exactly right.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thanks, Michael and Hannah. What do they say? Democracy is a verb, right? It's
Right.
verb, you know, and that includes economic democracy. You know, it's something that requires engagement for sure. Okay, other questions or thoughts from folks?
There was a question in the chat if y'all want to open that.
Oh.
I wanted to say, yeah, I see Amanda's question about organizations in Eastern Kentucky. Amanda, feel free to email me, and I have some colleagues who work in Kentucky specifically that are involved with ACI, and I can connect you with. I'd be happy to do that. And I think my email is in somewhere, or I can type it in the chat.
Also, Co-op Cincy, being located right across the river, has had a lot of people from Kentucky participating. And we've done some cooperative writing with law school people on the legal principles. So there's a lot of good back and forth.
I think that's the University of Louisville, right? There's some
right.
co-op interest
That's
there.
right.
So yeah.
That's right.
Great, great. Okay, other questions from folks or thoughts? You can tell us that we're crazy too, if you like, you know.
Right. Although I used to get, that's a funny, I used to get this remark, well, you know, you're out there in the lunatic, you know, liberal fringe when we started this, but we don't get that anymore. Now people are looking at us as being quite mainstream, but an enlightened mainstream, which is actually non-predatory. So it's a nice place to be back in the good old American middle.
Right, right. And I think cooperatives are you know, a perfect fit for that. You know, I'll say, you know, that I grew up in West Virginia, come from a coal mining family. And, you know, cooperatives, when you go to the hollers of West Virginia, and both Hannah and Michael, you've heard me say this before. You know, whether people are left leaning or right leaning, everybody likes democracy, right? Everybody wants, you know, the freedom to determine the future of their of how they earn a living and how their communities are structured. And, you know, cooperatives do that. And so democracy sort of is, in many ways, bridges the gap between this the left and the right that we have today,
Right.
which is very problematic for us in terms of moving forward. So cooperatives provide, I think, a very unique role in bringing folks together in that regard.
That's right, and I think you're totally right. And I think if you look at the political demographics of the cooperative movement, it's really split down the middle. We have equal communities on both sides, depending on geography, depending on sector, and yet they all come together for the cooperative principles. So I think that is the secular, I don't want to say religion, but it's the secular creed or code which can unite everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes this work so interesting. I had a colleague who said, if you've seen one co-op, you've seen one co-op. There are businesses working in, I mean, every business you can imagine, from a bicycle shop to multi-billion-dollar agricultural marketing cooperatives, to mutual insurance companies, to localized county-based consumer co-ops or things like that. And they all operate by this set of shared principles and this shared model that can be applied in all of those situations. So I enjoy kind of seeing the application of the cooperative model in all of these diverse ways that really reflects whatever the need of the community is. So that's a fun part of this.
That's so true. That is so true. And I've had people who have really been so successful growing these very important cooperatives come to me and say, yeah, we grew this, you know, in one case, $1 billion cooperative, but we understand that unless we get back in touch with our cooperative values, we'll never reach the next level of growth. So it's always the values that take us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, one more. I'll throw out one more opportunity for any questions or comments. All right. Well, I'll leave us with the sales pitch as well. You know, we invite anyone and everyone, you know, interested in helping to build this cooperative ecosystem in Central Appalachia to join us, right? This is a process. It's a collaborative process. I'll also say that Michael mentioned the folks at Reimagine Appalachia. And the Reimagine Appalachia initiative is doing some really, really good things in terms of promoting economic democracy and sustainability in Appalachia. Michael and I are involved in constructing a white paper with some folks at Reimagine Appalachia on the role that cooperatives are playing and can play in the future in long-term sustainable development within the region. And if you'd like more information about that or like to be involved, you can contact Michael or myself, and we can rope you into that process as well. Okay, any final thoughts, Hannah or Michael, before we break for lunch?
Hannah, you first.
I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to continuing this work, and hopefully we'll see you around.
That's great. And from my point, again, I'm really grateful to work with this team and grateful for the platform. This is actual blessed and blessing work. And for anybody out there who thinks that it's a bridge too far or it's impossible, I can promise you, people from every walk of life are creating cooperatives. It doesn't matter whether the economy is developed or developing. We had a session this morning where we realized how much we can learn from developing economies that have got it, just like we can learn from more mature models. So this is completely possible, and no one should be put off by any perceived barriers because they're just not there.
Perfect. That's a great note to end on. Thank both of you, Michael and Hannah, once again for being involved in this panel. I'm so glad that you agreed to share your knowledge with us, and I want to thank the participants who have logged in here, and I want to thank any folks who, in the future, choose to view this because it's all going to be recorded. So for those of you out there who are yet to be identified as participants, I want to thank you as well and offer to you, the opportunity to connect with us and chat more about this. So with that, I think we'll call it a session and go on and enjoy other sessions within the Appalachian Studies Association Conference. There's, if you look at the program, there's a lot out there, some fantastic things that are being presented and discussed. And again, thanks to the ASA people for putting this on. Wonderful job. This is new to all of us, and you've really done a great job. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.